Any other wars started? Brandenburg. Brandenburg's in a war. Who are they fighting right now? Bohemia, Salzburg, Lorraine, and Memmingen. So this is apparently what the Brandenburg and Polish player were talking about was the partition of Bohemia between their two powers. So we shall see precisely what it is that they are after. The partition did begin last time, but Poland was not here for a large chunk of that session. Meanwhile, in France seems to have carved up what they want. Britain, or England, also taking a couple of provinces. Flanders going to the Flemish. Holland is now currently being occupied, which I'm sure is going to cause issues for Friesland. Holland is extremely wealthy territory to have, so if the Frisians could get their hands on that, then that would be good. I do wonder if the Frisians have made any agreements with their larger neighbours, whether they've sought the protection of the Germanic powers of Ulm and Austria, or whether they've gone for the Eastern European, Brandenburg and Poland, or if they're going to be joining the Western Coalition, or the Great Power Coalition, should really call them, in France and Castile and England. There is a fight going on right now, Burgundy fighting against Castile. Castile does have the 15% extra morale modifier, which is able to equate with what Burgundy has got, and this time they have brought the numbers, even though Burgundy does have a superior general, and they are able to win that fight without too many issues. Meanwhile, Friesland is currently fighting against Utrecht. Is this an alliance between Utrecht and East Frisia? It is. So this is going to be a very handy route of expansion for the Frisians. Friesland does have a fairly substantial army, actually, for their size. That's quite impressive. 8,000 troops. Their navy leaves a lot to be desired, but they do only have 2 naval provinces, like Osnabrück and Munster are both land. And Friesland does have allies, which is saying they could call in Mecklenburg. Mecklenburg being the one province minor over there. Mecklenburg being what Lübeck now is. You used to, if you wanted to be the Hansa, have to play as Mecklenburg back in Europa Universalis IV. I don't remember if that was true in 4. At the start of 4. I know that definitely was the case in 3, so if you wanted to play as the Hansa, you had to play as them. Are Spain and France still allied? They have to be, because they're in a war together. Once the war is over, I'm expecting that alliance to end. Is the New World starting to be colonized yet? It is 1492. Columbus sailed the ocean blue. Portugal is over here. As is Charles playing as the Inca, but that doesn't count as a colonizer. So Portugal is currently in Brazil. They are also in southwest Africa, but this is a trading post, so none of the institutions will spread. So a legit player in Congo is basically going to need to wait for Morocco or Tunis to spread far enough south, or they're going to need to wait for the natural spread of the institutions via Mali, which is almost getting feudalism. Songhai is also not far away. At that point it can spread to Dagbon, Mosi, Dahomey, and eventually Benin. And then what the Congo needs to do is they need to take over Cameroon, and then any institutions that these guys get, they can get too. And the Congo does have, if I remember correctly, expansion ideas. So they have the colonists, they can do it, and they really should. I mean, they've seen it. That would be really a place to take as a matter of priority. If Portugal gets that, it would be a bit of a disaster for them. Take the coast first, worry about this inland stuff after. I'm sure you'll have to remind Spain and France to end the alliances they will forget. We'll see. I mean, it's up to them to enforce. And if they still don't, then I will need to think up a more serious malice than points. Was that an Ethiopia player? Yeah, so Ethiopia does have a player. I forgot that last session. I am sorry about that. I could have sworn they did, and I do remember myself rather badly saying, oh, Ethiopia doesn't have a player, therefore I don't care about them. When in the back of my mind is like, but they do. I could have sworn they do. Yeah, Bjornvar is in Ethiopia. He wasn't there in the first session, but was late last session, and that's why I thought Ethiopia didn't. So Ming continues to struggle with rebels. 30,000 wounded separatists, 25,000 against their 19,000. I think that Ming is going to struggle here. Hoshikawa, meanwhile, is just sitting back and recovering by the looks of things. They do still have a coalition with Ashikaga and Imagawa, but just those two, which is not enough to actually trigger a coalition. Ashikaga is starting to take a couple more territories for themselves, which will make them stronger, especially as they are the shogun right now. But I think that Hoshikawa is now in such a dominant position, I don't really see that being a problem. Oh, they are at war against Soa Nimagawa. So they are trying to take the victory point, which makes a lot of sense. So that's one being claimed. That's one over here. England, I am sure, have recaptured Kelra in the meantime. What? I'm lagging. I never lag. Am I really? No.
Mordred Viking is lagging behind.
Yeah, I saw that, but I'm not anymore. Often that happens when I alt-tab, but I was not tabbed, which is why I'm like, huh?
You terrible person. You should feel ashamed.
Anyway, it should be good to speed up again.
Yeah, no, we are. Oh, goodness, we're down to 1. Hold on.
Yeah. And... nope, rock solid. Very weird. Jolly old Ethiopia will see more rebels, as it should now be mandatory for any player of that nation. Well, the rebel master is currently over here in Ulm, and I was saying to Ulm last week, actually, I've been really impressed by the lack of rebels that they've been facing. Although Ulm seems to be having a couple of problems of their own. They seem to have triggered a bit of a coalition. Oh no, it's not a coalition. They attacked Bavaria, who is allied with Augsburg, Bohemia, Lorraine, Mainz, and Trier. They are apparently getting their asses kicked, though. They are up against a lot of bad guys, and their army is only 2,000 strong. So I suspect that Ulm may have overplayed their card this time, going after their favourite kicking bag, Bavaria. They were probably expecting them to be a walkover, seeing as Bohemia was currently being occupied, but never underestimate the other powers. Never, ever, ever, ever. Great time to plug the CPU. Sir Squire, I've already got it. It's installed. It's paid for. Well, obviously it's paid for and then installed. I was working out the kinks and the bugs last night, but yeah, the CPU's there. The CPU shouldn't be affecting the speed. And no, I'm keeping up now. That was really weird. Congo is saying, what happens to fog? What am I missing? How do you mean? Oh, Hoshikawa is saying that Ashikaga attacked them. Yeah, so this... oh no. Reconquest. This is not the smashing of bad daimyos. So Ashikaga attacked Hoshikawa, which is interesting. It's bringing in a couple more troops. They have almost besieged down so that should end the fight over there, and then they should be able to focus on Ashikaga themselves completely. Meanwhile... war against Burgundy continues to rage onwards. War against Utrecht also continues. They are currently trying to siege down Friesland. And they did actually call in their allies Mecklenburg. All might be big enough that they're over 100% to annex. I suspect that they are. Plus they have a bunch of vassals, which the AI would probably release first. But this is not looking good for Ulm. Ulm has definitely made a bit of a misstep here. You seem to have a graphics glitch. Is there a way of getting rid of that? Yes, just by selecting another country. Naples, currently being occupied by Burgundy. France does seem to have recognized the threat and have moved south. This would explain where the Burgundian army has been throughout all of this. Meanwhile, Saxony also being occupied by Bavaria. Is Saxony on Ulm's side? Saxony is on Ulm's side. So, yeah, I'm not that surprised. That was actually a fairly safe war, I would have thought. Saxony have just pieced out, probably a white peace, which is going to make it easier for Bavaria to retake their territories. They're almost certainly going to go and take Ingolstadt and München back. I don't think that Ulm will take too many other losses, although these are Bavarian cores, so there's not going to be any aggressive expansion for retaking those. So actually, no, Ulm is in trouble here. Like, some of their most development, their cores. It's a reconquest. Inca saying, I don't know what to do with all of this money. And then Oirat saying, money? What is money? Inca really is sitting on a fair treasure trove of cash. Are they able to build buildings? They can build forts. But don't they have their own building system? Or have they reformed? Come to Africa, I take investments. I'm trying to remember how on earth the native building works, or is that only for the North American? Can the South American build their own stuff? Because if we switch over to Iroquois, for example, and then try to go to the build page, yeah, it's this. This is what I was expecting to see, because this can be a really big boost to the output of your nation, and they are not massively expensive, but they certainly cost a little, and just take time to do. And yeah, we can check the reforms. I know that they've done one reform already, which is the expanded Mitma policy, which is more colonists. But that doesn't give them access to more buildings, as far as I'm aware. So no, they have not reformed, but the South Americans work differently from the North Americans. I've never actually played as a South American native nation. No Aztecs, no Central Americans, no Inca. I've only ever played as the North Americans. Okay, Sweden. What did Sweden take? They took Schleswig and Holstein. They did not take a lot of Denmark. And a chunk of Norway. So Sweden trying to expand into Norway rather than Denmark right now. Unless, of course, Denmark is a vassal or anything. No, they just have the personal union. The Kalmar Union is still alive between Denmark and Norway right now. Meanwhile, the Ottomans being very quiet at the moment. Hopefully having had their AI settings set correctly. Meanwhile, we have Nogai going into... Oirat going into Nogai. Definitely expanding very close to Muscovy, and Muscovy is going to be seeing this most likely with some alarm that Oirat is pushing this hard and this quickly. Meanwhile, Ming are being left to their own devices. We still have Miao separatists now, as well as the Ji and Wun. They are slowly but surely taking territories back, but it is a slow process. Meanwhile, Hoshikawa are fighting back against their Ashikaga oppressors. Although Setsu, their capital, had fallen. They have taken over So. So, the leader of this war, they were. They still need to take out Emagawa, which are over... Oh, it's these guys, the yellows. So this is a pretty big problem for Hoshikawa, actually. They're up against Ashikaga, which are the purples. They're up against the yellows, and they themselves own this. So it's basically half of Japan versus the other half. This is the punitive war, before the punitive war. And what might well happen here is, if Hoshikawa takes out too much land, then Ashikaga may declare the punitive war immediately after. I don't know if there's any limitations on that. So's on low enthusiasm. Imagawa is still on pretty high. Imagawa is still with 6,000 troops against the 9,000-ish that Hoshikawa has. And then Ashikaga are the other interesting power. They've got 9,000. So yeah, this is 18,000 troops against the 9,000 that Hoshikawa have. I mean, we've seen Hoshikawa beating worse odds than this, but never against such large nations. It was always against small ones, which they could separate piece out. So it's going to be kind of interesting how they do that. Meanwhile, Malacca still spreading through Borneo, taking over most of the south coast here. Not really doing anything particularly aggressive against any of the other powers over there. Palembang are a pirate confederacy, so they are going to be causing some piracy in this area. Palembang are another interesting one that you can play as. They're the only nation that starts the game as pirates, except now for Tsushima. So Palembang and Tsushima can become pirates at roughly the same amount of time. There are 4 native systems tribes in both North and South America: Nahuatl, Aztec and the Napers, Maya further south in Central America, and then the Inti, the Inca, and other countries in the Andes. Aha. Amazon tribes and run the same system as the North American ones. Gotcha! It's like Carib. Yes, have the buildings. And the infamous Musca are Andean. Cool. So what is happening down here in Africa? Tunis is going after Zazao. Morocco... Oh no, Morocco is going after Mossi and Dagbon. Do we have any further spread of institutions? No. Songhai? Yes, Songhai have now embraced, I think, and are actually getting Renaissance. Yeah, they have to have embraced to get Renaissance. So Renaissance is now spreading throughout Songhai. Zazao doesn't. What's happened to... Oh, there's Mali. Mali has feudalism already and is now getting Renaissance. So it should start spreading closer and closer to the coast. Congo. What is Congo colonizing right now? They do have a colonist. He is in use. Luanda. Oh, they're going for the south coast instead of north. Probably trying to take over Benguela because it's a natural harbour. But Cameroon, oh, this is so much more important for you. Unless they think they can't hold it or something, which is possible. Because we do know that the Europeans like going after the African coastline, and the Congo is a very juicy target in terms of coastlines. Oirat seem to have ended their war against Nogai. They took some pretty haphazard territories here. Iron mine, I guess. Gold mine. Fur. Iron. There's some pretty nice resources over here. I've never really checked that before. So we have a gold mine, which Oirat now controls. So how much is Oirat making from gold? With that being the case. Only 0.06. And this is a fortress on a mountain, which should be pretty effective against any Muscovite ambitions to the east. Meanwhile, the British-Castellan War continues to rage on. I thought they had a lot of the Netherlands, or a lot of Holland occupied, but apparently they do not. This is already a 100% war goal. So what are they doing? England is apparently pieced out. They went for Artois, just expanding their reach in Calais a little bit, and of course Helra is now completely occupied. Friesland, meanwhile, has taken out Ostfriesland. They did not take Overstricht or Utrecht from Utrecht, so I wonder what their AE situation is like. Yeah, so even just taking one province sets them right on the verge of further issues. 45, 47, 31, 47. So they really only could take that one province, which is very unfortunate. They vassalized? Ah, they vassalized Utrecht. Okay, that makes sense. So they directly took Ostfriesland because it's not HRE, it doesn't matter. And then they vassalized Utrecht, which makes, yeah, loads of sense. Meanwhile, Ulm. Oh dear. Oh dear, oh dear. Ulm is now a two-province minor. Bavaria having taken everything around them and also released all of their vassals. That is a humongous setback for Ulm right there. Oh, how unfortunate. But is Bavaria going to have AE issues? Nope. So all Ulm has done here is significantly empowered their nearest rival. And in fact is mostly now surrounded by them. Oh, was it a 99.5 autonomy gold mine? Eek. Ulm is now twice as strong as when they started. I mean, that's true. And Ulm, the city, is still a pretty big city. It's a 40 development location. It's just unfortunate that it's hills, because that gives you the 25%, or the plus, yeah, the 25% dev cost. The interesting one to watch is the contest between Constantinople, which shouldn't grow very much more this session, Rome, which is the largest city in the world and has been for a while, and then Cusco, the unlikely contender of Cusco, which is a gold province, and it is a 44 development in the mountains. Crikey, he's got to be spending a lot of monarch points on this. But it is currently Rome's equal. And I know that Inca's been having a few problems because they can't actually see Europe. So their ledger is rather limited in what it tells them about the size of the provinces.